Tokyo, Japan, home to more than 14 million people. It's a city that never really slows down. With the global rise of Japanese pop culture, more and more people began flocking to places like Shibuya, Shinjuku, and especially Akihabara, the mecca for anime fans. Bright lights, towering buildings, electronics, arcades, cosplay cafes. Akihabara is where people go to escape reality and dive into fantasy. But on one Sunday afternoon, that fantasy was shattered. Today, let's talk about the Akihabara mass killings. It was June 8th, 2008. The streets of Akihabara were packed as usual. People were walking around, shopping, chatting, enjoying the weekend. No one had any reason to suspect that anything was off. That is, until a 2-ton Isuzu Elf truck came barreling through the intersection at full speed, running a red light and mowing down 5 pedestrians. At first, people thought it was a freak accident, a crash, maybe brake failure, something tragic but not unheard of. But then the driver stepped out. That's when the screaming started. The man behind the wheel was Tomohiro Kato. He wasn't just there to cause a traffic accident. He had a dagger in his hand and started attacking anyone nearby. People who had just been laughing and walking with friends were now running, crying, or lying wounded on the ground. Chaos broke out in seconds. Kato stabbed anyone he could reach, bystanders, passers-by, even police officers who rushed in to help. By the time it was over, 17 people had been killed or injured. He tried to escape, but an officer from the nearby Akihabara police box caught up with him. During the struggle, Kato slashed at the officer, even cutting through his protective gear. But the officer managed to hit him in the side of the head with a baton, knocking him off balance. With his gun drawn, the officer warned Kato to drop the weapon or risk getting shot. Kato gave up. He dropped the dagger and was arrested on the spot. Emergency crews rushed to the scene not long after the attack. It was a Sunday, and the street where this all happened, Chuotori, was closed off to traffic as usual, turned into what locals called a pedestrian paradise. People strolled around, shopping, sightseeing, and just enjoying the day. But in an instant, that street became a scene of horror. With crowds scattering in panic, many didn't even have time to process what was happening. Some fell, others froze. And in that chaos, Tomohiro Kato kept moving. Blood covered the street. And it later came to light that he was carrying not just 1, but 5 knives. After his arrest, Kato was sent to the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's office on June 10th. A few weeks later, on July 7th, the prosecutors requested a psychiatric evaluation. It was approved, and by October 6th, the evaluation concluded that Kato was mentally competent and fully responsible for what he had done. So, what led this man to this point? Tomohiro Kato was born on September 28, 1982, in Koshogawara, Aomori Prefecture. He was the eldest of 2 sons. His parents were strict, especially his mother. She had graduated from one of the top schools in Aomori and was laser-focused on academic success, her children's specifically. But this wasn't just discipline. According to reports, her methods crossed the line into abuse. Kato's childhood was full of rigid rules. He was expected to go to cram school, swimming class, and do extra studying. He wasn't allowed to visit friends or have them over. Even his homework wasn't safe from his mother's control. She often rewrote his assignments if they didn't meet her standards. The punishments were cruel. If he was late coming home, she would throw food at him and force him to eat it. If he cried, she stuffed a towel in his mouth and sent him outside in thin clothes, even during Aomori's brutal winters. If he failed to answer questions fast enough, she'd hit him. If he didn't recite his times tables, she would dunk him in the bath. She controlled everything, what he studied, what he wore, what the family did. Even vacations were chosen by her. Kato later wrote that he became a reflection of her, a person who thought she was always right, who lashed out when things didn't go her way. He described himself as a copy of his mother, someone who believed her way was the only way. He said the anger he felt when people didn't behave as he expected was the same anger he had seen in her. In many ways, he became the very person he feared the most. Growing up under his mother's shadow, Tomohiro Kato pushed himself hard because that's what was expected of him. He studied, performed well, and even managed to get into Aomori Prefectural High School, one of the top schools in the area, and the same one his mother had attended. It had a deviation score of 70, known for being extremely competitive, but none of that earned him praise. Even when he did exactly what she wanted, his mother kept pushing, criticizing, and punishing him. His father stayed on the sidelines, watching but never stepping in. Eventually, Kato started to see his family not as loved ones, but as strangers living under the same roof. By the time he entered high school, the pressure and resentment reached a breaking point. He stopped studying altogether. He lashed out at his mother, both emotionally and physically, at one point even smashing a window with his bare hands during a fight. Still, his mother didn't back off. She had already planned his future. She wanted him to get into the prestigious engineering faculty at Hokkaido University. But his grades weren't good enough, so instead, he enrolled in the Department of Automotive Engineering at Central Japan Automobile Junior College. Later on, after everything happened, Kato said he sometimes wondered if his life would have turned out differently if he had gotten into the university his mother wanted. But at that time, college life didn't mean much to him. He barely studied, skipped classes, and got more into bikes than books. He joined a motorcycle club, worked on modifications, and toured with his friends, eventually flunking his chances at earning an auto mechanic certification. When asked what he wanted to do after graduation, Kato said he wanted to become a junior high school teacher. He even told friends and teachers he planned to transfer to a university back in Aomori, but that didn't happen either. After graduating, he moved to Sendai and lived on his own. His mom was still paying his way. 3 months in, he got a job through a temp agency, working security, mostly guarding vehicles at construction sites. Later, he became a junior employee inside the company. In 2004, he got his driver's license, using his mother's money, and bought a used car. But his spending spiraled out of control, and he began racking up debt from consumer loans. Despite this, coworkers described him as friendly. He had friends both inside and outside of work, showed up on time, and didn't cause problems. But in 2005, something snapped again. He became unhappy with a colleague and abruptly quit. After that, he bounced from job to job. He worked at an automobile factory in Ageo City as a temp, but after falling out with coworkers, he started skipping work and got kicked out of the company dorm. In 2006, he moved to Tsukuba, lived in another dorm, and was fired once again for the same reason, not showing up at work. Eventually, he returned to Aomori, back under his mother's financial care. In 2007, he got hired as a full-time driver for a big transportation company. But once again, he quit, this time because he was upset he didn't get a 2-week summer vacation. Looking at Tomohiro Kato's work history, there was a clear pattern. The moment he felt frustrated or let down, even slightly, he would stop showing up. No explanations, no confrontations, he would just disappear. And while he kept bouncing from job to job, he also leaned heavily on his mother for money. She paid for his driver's license, his car, and even supported him when he wasn't working. On top of that, he borrowed from loan sharks, digging himself deeper into debt. Around May 2006, things started to shift again, this time online. Kato became more and more absorbed in internet bulletin boards. He later described them as the place that filled in all the empty spaces in his life. Those blanks, as he called them, were the long stretches of time he spent feeling isolated and cut off from society. To him, it was like being socially dead. A psychiatrist named Tamami Katada later analyzed Kato using a memoir written by his brother. She pointed out that Kato grew up with strict limits on human connection. He wasn't allowed to freely interact with others. On top of that, he absorbed a kind of narcissism from his mother and projected it onto himself, at least through his teenage years. On the mobile bulletin boards, Kato created a persona, a lonely, bitter man suffering in a cruel world. And when people responded to that version of him, he kept it going, calling himself the Lord of the Ugly Thread. By November 2007, Kato had signed on as a temp at a factory in Susono, Shizuoka Prefecture, working for Nikken Sogyo. He had left Aomori after getting chased down for his car loan debt, and by this time, he was completely immersed in online bulletin boards. In mid-May 2008, about a month before the attack, rumors started circulating at his job about possible mass layoffs. Kato panicked. He was afraid he would be out of work again, and he confided in a coworker about it. But by June 3rd, management announced that contracts would continue until at least August. Kato told someone the next day, "Looks like I don't have to quit." But then on June 5th, something small triggered a downward spiral. He couldn't find his work jumpsuit. That's it. That was enough to make him feel like he was being pushed out again. He went home on the spot. Not long after, someone messaged him saying the jumpsuit had been found. But Kato didn't calm down. Instead, he convinced himself that it was hidden on purpose, that people wanted him gone. He even wrote about it on one of the bulletin boards. To make things worse, someone started impersonating him online, posting as Kato and saying things he never said. This enraged him. He snapped. He wrote, "I'm going to cause an incident." He thought that maybe if he did something extreme, the person impersonating him would be blamed too. At 10:44 a.m., he posted, "I'm going to Fukui tomorrow." That wasn't just a casual trip. He went there and bought 6 daggers. Then, on the morning of June 8th, the day of the attack, Kato created a new thread at 5:21 a.m. He posted about 30 messages in total. At 11:45 a.m., as he arrived in Akihabara, he changed the title to "Kill People in Akihabara." And the post read, "I will use a knife when I can't use my car. Goodbye, everyone." At 12:10, he left one final message. "It's time." And 20 minutes later, he began the attack. After the incident made headlines, the public and media scrambled to understand why he did it. One of the most common theories was that Kato felt hopeless as a young man stuck in unstable, temporary work, someone who saw no future. But during his trial, Kato said that wasn't it. He insisted his motives had nothing to do with his job status. According to him, it was more about his own extreme way of thinking, quitting jobs, disappearing, and shutting down whenever things didn't go his way. He never tried to work things out with his bosses or coworkers. He just left. Another theory labeled him as a loser in society. On one of his threads, Kato had written, "Losers are born losers. Let's realize it first and then accept it." After the attack, some online communities disturbingly began treating him like a symbol. Some even called him a hero, a guru, or worse, a savior of society's outcasts. But Kato rejected that too. He said he didn't understand people who seriously identified as losers and blamed the world for their failures. He found their bitterness repulsive. The third theory people often talk about is the so-called Hikikomori theory. In Japan, the term Hikikomori refers to individuals who withdraw completely from society, staying indoors, avoiding work, surviving off their parents, and living almost entirely online. Given Kato's upbringing, strict parenting, especially from his mother, some thought he was headed down that path from a young age. It was easy to imagine how years of emotional control could lead to isolation, anxiety, and eventually a deep sense of detachment from the outside world. He didn't fit in at work. He felt alienated, and little by little, that gap between him and society kept growing. The one place where he did feel like he belonged was the internet, more specifically the bulletin boards. So when those boards were vandalized by someone impersonating him, it pushed him over the edge. It wasn't just embarrassment or anger, it was betrayal in the only place he thought he could be himself. But not everyone agrees with the Hikikomori label. Sociologist Shinji Miyadai challenged that idea. He pointed out that Kato had friends. He wasn't completely cut off from society. He worked, went to bars, talked openly with others, and even made friends through the very bulletin boards that people claim isolated him. He traveled across the country to meet them. Even on the day of the incident, he called an old coworker and asked if they wanted to hang out. Still, despite those connections, people insisted that Kato was lonely. And maybe that's the thing. Loneliness isn't always about how many people you have around. You can laugh with friends, go out for drinks, and still feel completely alone. Kato, for his part, rejected most of the theories about his motives. He claimed that investigators twisted his story to fit a convenient narrative. He also criticized the media for running with those interpretations without digging deeper. When asked why he did it, Kato didn't offer a single clear reason. He said that before Akihabara, he had considered other plans, setting fire to his old security company's office in Sendai or crashing into an oncoming truck to kill himself. But none of that happened. Instead, he chose Akihabara. In court, the deeper issue came into focus: Kato's belief system. If someone did something he didn't like, instead of talking it through, he cut them off, or worse, reacted with violence. This mindset, many believed, was a reflection of how he was raised, modeled after his mother's controlling and uncompromising ways. After years of court proceedings, Tomohiro Kato was sentenced to death in 2015. He stayed in prison with almost no contact with anyone but his lawyer. He refused visits, didn't accept gifts, and spent his final years in silence. On July 26, 2022, he was executed at the age of 39. There were rumors about the timing of this execution, that it was somehow tied to the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe just weeks before. Some pointed out that both Kato and Abe's assassin, Tetsuya Yagamami, were the same age and had controlling mothers who deeply shaped their lives. But according to Mainichi Shimbun, Kato's execution had been scheduled long before and wasn't related to anything political. After the attack, Kato's entire family came under fire. His parents were blamed. His mother was vilified. His father resigned from his job, divorced, and lived alone back in Aomori. His mother, racked with guilt and slipping into mental illness, was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. And his younger brother, unable to carry the weight of the shame, ended himself in 2014. The case seemed to be over, but was it really? After Kato's execution, people started to look at the case again. They noticed some inconsistencies, little things that didn't quite line up. And slowly, some began to wonder, was Tomohiro Kato really acting alone that day? Or is there more to the Akihabara tragedy than we were told? So there's something about the Akihabara case that just doesn't sit right with some people. Over the years, a few details have sparked rumors that maybe Tomohiro Kato wasn't the only one involved, or worse, that he might not have been the actual killer at all. So let's start with the first thing that raised eyebrows: the sheer speed and scale of the attack. Kato drove a 2-ton truck into a busy intersection, hit multiple people, then got out, and within 2 minutes, stabbed 12 people. That's what the reports say, 12 victims in just 2 minutes. And these weren't minor injuries. 4 people died at the scene from deep, fatal wounds. That kind of violence would take a lot of force, precision, and stamina. But if you look at photos of Kato, he is a thin, almost frail-looking guy. No visible muscle mass, no signs of someone with the strength to inflict that much damage so quickly. It makes people wonder, was it physically possible for him to do that alone? Then there's the second thing, the lack of blood. Think about it. If someone stabs a dozen people, especially at close range, wouldn't you expect blood on their hands, on their clothes? But when Kato was arrested, he was wearing an off-white jacket and beige chinos that were spotless, no blood splatter, no stains. His hands were clean too. Meanwhile, you can see pools of blood on the pavement and photos of the victims being treated. So how did the attacker walk away without a single visible trace? Now here's the third point, and it's maybe the strangest of them all, the footage. The incident happened in 2008, before smartphones with high-def video were everywhere. And yet, there's clear footage of the arrest, not blurry or shaky, clear. Turns out, a member of the technical management team from Japan Television just so happened to be on site with a digital camera in hand and started recording the moment it happened. In a span of 2 minutes during absolute chaos, he managed to capture the arrest with a steady shot. Some people say that's a miracle. Others say it's too convenient. And these strange coincidences led to a bigger theory, that maybe Kato wasn't alone, that maybe there was another person involved. Witnesses claimed they saw a short, heavy-set man covered in blood, holding a survival knife. Multiple people described this man, not Kato. Some even said he was the one who got out of the truck and started the stabbing. If that is true, then who was he? Why didn't police ever investigate that lead? Why was it never reported in the media? And that's where the conspiracy theories start. Some believe the real killer had connections, someone in power, and Kato was chosen as a scapegoat. They point to how quickly TV crews appeared, how Kato showed no bloodstains, and how all other testimonies were dismissed without explanation. After the attack, the government moved quickly. Pedestrian paradise in Akihabara was cancelled, surveillance increased, and online activity came under tighter control. Some say the incident was used as an excuse to tighten public control, and Kato was the perfect figure to pin it all on. But here's the thing, despite all those questions, none of the conspiracy theories were ever backed by hard evidence. The eyewitness reports of a fat man with a knife were never formally filed. No one came forward publicly, and no one left credible posts on bulletin boards. And this was Akihabara on a Sunday. If there had been someone else, surely more people would have noticed. Someone would have spoken up, but they didn't. So maybe those testimonies were nothing more than rumors. So what do you think? Do you believe Tomohiro Kato acted alone? Or was there something else going on beneath the surface of that quiet Sunday afternoon in Akihabara? After all, these theories mostly live on forums and social media. Official investigations and credible media have consistently identified Kato as the sole attacker. So while the doubts are out there, they've never been backed by solid evidence. If you dig into these theories, just make sure to keep a critical eye. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.